usual suspects. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite footballer updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back this beautiful Wednesday morning with 23 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. Apologies for the bit of lateness. By the time I got get on to the broadcast, it turned out my battery was a bit low. I cannot charge the phone while we're broadcasting. So, but anyways, no users, but it is what it is. I'm happy that we are back. So we'll get into so much for making us proud. Thank you so much for your contribution to the debate and the discussion. Hey Pedri, good morning to you. I'm happy to tell you that today, after today's broadcast, after this morning's broadcast, I will be posting under the post section on the channel our details on how you can join our fantasy Premier League, leagues there. So I'll be posting that so that and insert the link so that people can just go there and join, the league. So thank you so much. You've practically engineered this. You brought the idea, you pushed me to get it done, and I've created it. So yeah, I'll be putting it up after today's broadcast. So good morning. I hope you're doing well. I hope everything is okay with you. So thank you so much for that. And I hope you will help me to invite other people that are interested in taking part of the, fantasy to play. So, and then we'll get to see. Trust me, my team is amazing. All right. We'll see. It's going to be a long season. So on the other side, I think, like I told you, I'm that kind of person when it comes to the fantasy, fantasy league. I'm the kind of person who oftentimes will create my football team and not it for the rest of the season. So my interaction with fantasy league has, to say the least, been very, very minimal. But you encouraged me to do this, and I said, why not? Why not? After all, it's a free service. Why? Let's get to it. And so we'll see. We'll see how it all happens. Anyways, allow me to have our audios tested and not everything that's checked out on a secondary device. But I think we are good to go. Did you watch a tutorial video? Not really, by the way. Just that when I went to the website to create it, I figured that option of creating it was not available at my disposal. So I figured that for you to create a link, you had to be diverted to the app. So I had to download the Premier League app and I get on things. So I can't be able to say all the most, but I've created the basic. So the league is there. It's going to be called Footballtribeug. Basically the name of the channel without any space. And then, so I'll provide the link for people to join automatically. So that's what I've done. Anyways, as of this beautiful Wednesday morning, and there's plenty for us to discuss. Our conversation this morning will revolve around Manchester United. The whole of yesterday was dedicated to Liverpool. We discussed majority of Liverpool and our assessment of them going into the new season. And today we'll focus on Manchester United, but we also will get to speak about PSG versus Tottenham because that's the UEFA Super Cup fixture that does get underway today. But before we get started into all that, as well as the transfers, I wish to say thank you so much to all our new subscribers, people that have recently joined the community. Thank you so much for making us proud. Thank you so much for giving us the encouragement to continue doing what we do. You guys have really subscribed. As of this morning, we are at 1,490. And remember, the objective is to get to 2,000 subscribers. And it would be really very nice if we could achieve that before the end of this month, if possible. But that's the objective. So thank you so much to all the new community members. People that do engage under the comment section, people that do engage on our videos, people that watch our shorts. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure really seeing you there, and the content, the comments that you post there. You say Pedri bench boost adds up the points of your bench. A wild card allows you to change your team completely. Free hints allows you to change your team for only one game week. Triple captain, triples a player's scores, okay. Okay. Thank you for the insights. Thank you for the insights. I'll continue to look into them as I improve my acclimatization with the Fantasy Premier League platform. Anyways, so yesterday we had a very fruitful discussion revolving around Alexander Isak and his situation with Newcastle. We had that discussion about Liverpool's pursuit for the two centre backs in Mark Cahill and Giovanni Leoni. They are the 18-year-old from Parma. So and things like that. And then they remain interested in signing Alexander Isak, although because Newcastle have yet to find a replacement. It looks like for now, they maintain not for sale. That's their stance. And yesterday, I was reading another report that did seem to suggest that the player is not in protest against reuniting with the team, just as a form of encouragement for the club to continue searching for a replacement because they've known it for quite some time that he will be leaving this summer. However, if that fails to happen, then he could be okay reuniting with the team. They can receive up to 2 points per match for defensive contributions. For goalkeepers, it serves and clean sheets. Okay, that's quite very insightful. I think I'll learn on the job as we go. We'll improve as we go. But so for now, that's the situation on the Fantasy Premier League side. So yeah, then we come Gianluigi Donnarumma, who did pen literally his farewell message to fans, saying that he would like to be at Parc des Princes to bid them farewell in the right manner. In that case, however, should it not happen, then it will be unfortunate because he said someone, although he didn't put it in quotes, he said someone has made the tough decision for him. I read the comment above. I think I've read the comments. Players. Okay, pick players that are guaranteed minutes, score goals, have assists, and this year consider defensive contributions like Caicedo and Morio. I think in my pick of the team when it came to the Fantasy Premier League team, I think Caicedo was one of those. I do not know. I think Caicedo was one of those. Marco Correa, I think William Saliba, Jordan Pickford is one of those. I don't know. And by the way, I was a bit challenged in terms of the whole squad setup because I find some players are really expensive for nothing. For example, I wanted to sign Tom Heaton, although I knew he was never going to play. That's Manchester United Chelsea goalkeeper, and he was costing £4.5 million. And I'm like, what on God's green earth is this? I mean, why is he priced at almost the same with just a 10 price difference with a goalkeeper that is a renowned starter? Anyways, my disagreements with the player valuation aside. And then you have, for example, Benjamin Sesko, who cost more in the actual transfer window, less expensive than Victor Gyökeres in the Fantasy League. But anyways, it is what it is. So for those of you that are just joining us, my name is Robert K. Sakos, and I'm coming to you live from Kampala, Uganda. Welcome back to the Football Tribe channel. Do let me know where you're joining us from this beautiful morning. What team do you support? What would you want us to talk about? Put it down in the comment section, and we'll get to discuss it all as far as football is concerned. But everyone is going for the Grafka as his 4 million and plays regularly for Burnley. So I mean, those are the kinds of figures I was looking at. I would have expected that if you have £100 million to spend on a squad that big, that you'd be allowed to buy players that are worth £500,000, but they're not there. They're not there because at some point I'd gotten the basic of my team and I just needed one player for the sake of filling up the team, not whether they would play or not, but they could not allow me, and I had to readjust or meet some players that were really, really expensive, and but anyways, I believe that's the essence of the whole essence of playing the game anyway, that you get to sort of pick and choose, but operating within a limited budget. Anyways, let's kick things off with an update from the African Nations Championships. Yesterday we did have Senegal share the scores with Congo in a 1-1 draw, while Sudan put Nigeria to the sword with that 4-0 thumping over there. And matches do continue today when Madagascar plays Central African Republic, while Mauritania will be up against Burkina Faso. Then tomorrow, Morocco will be up against Zambia, while Angola, that Morocco are two-time champions of the African Nations Championships, while Angola will also be up against another two-time champions in Democratic Republic of Congo. Then on Friday, Guinea will be up against Algeria, while Niger will play South Africa. So that will conclude the official open weekdays until we go into the weekend. So that's the update from the African Nations Championship. You can also see the ownership of every player in the whole game. Try to go for one or two different players that are hidden games. It can put you above a lot of managers in the game. Okay. If I'm being honest, I've always found it easy for going a little bit of more of the obvious players, and by the more obvious players, I'm not saying just players from the big teams, but when you look at a goalkeeper like Jordan Pickford, given his track record, he is an obvious pick for many people. Then when you look around, I was looking at a player like what's his name, the Fulham right back. I'm forgetting his name, but I was trying to look out for players that are outside of the big four, big five teams, but are regular players and things like that. You went for Robert Sanchez, and I wouldn't touch him with the 10 football, my dear. I wouldn't touch him with the 10. For me, one of them is Ismail Sarr. Yeah, I would agree with you. Ismail Sarr at Crystal Palace is quite the game. Going maybe for a player like Ebeleche Eze. Yes, Ante Robinson is a player I was looking at. So you look at that assessment and say, yeah, I think that would give me a good team. But essentially, you also feel that because I even some of those players, by the way, that you think are games but not very popular, at the end of the day, I feel they are overpriced. I have that feeling that they are overpriced. They are overpriced. So something I do not agree with. It is the game, and we'll get to play the game the way it is. Let me see if I can read you that team before we wrap up that discussion about fantasy. Where do I even go to see my team? Oh, okay. Okay, just a second, trying to see if I can, my navigation of this whole system is still very lacking. I think Saul will score a lot of goals. The fixture against Chelsea is bad, but he will get you a lot of points. I think I could agree with that. He's one of those players that is exciting, especially if you did follow him last season in the FA Cup. I think he scored a brace against Aston Villa in the semi-finals. He's a very, very good player. A very, very good player. Really. Very, very decent player. Yes, I went for Jordan Pickford. I went for Kinski, the goalkeeper. Then I went for players like Munoz, Morgan Gibbs-White, Rodrigo Muniz of Fulham, having João Pedro, Caicedo, Bruno Fernandes, Josko Vardiol, Milinkovic. They are the centre back from Nottingham Forest. So yeah, those are some of the players that I think I can highlight about. So Milinkovic, Morgan Gibbs-White, Munoz from Crystal Palace, but those are on the bench. Yeah, that's what's up. But anyways, away from our fantasy, you say he has Sunderland game week 4 and West Ham away game week 5, which is good for an attacker's perspective. Moniz is a bit rotational risk, I think. Yeah, but again, he's on the bench. It's not like he's a starter. within my team. So it, it that's from the perspective from which I looked at it. Anyways, let's run into the fixture. Okay, let's start with Manchester United because why Manchester United will bounce back this season. I mean, I have every reason to believe that Man United is going to be a different team from the one we saw last season, particularly in the Premier League. And there's a good number of reasons to back that up going into the new season. I think if you're a Manchester United fan, you ought to be excited about going into this new season. And not because suddenly everything has changed to the positive, and that you're going to have a total flip of the coin from going to worse to the best, really. But there are a few noticeable things that I've looked upon to make up my decision on this. Why I think Manchester United will bounce back this season, and by bouncing back, I do not mean to say they'll be bouncing back to win the Premier League. No, they'll bounce back from their poor performance last season that saw them finish 15th on the Premier League table. I do not think there is anything they can do this season, particularly that makes them any worse than they were last season. Because even finishing 15th was more or less a blessing in disguise because of how the final results went down. And they got that win against Aston Villa, which many of us did not see coming, and they ended up finishing 15th. Otherwise, they should have finished 16th, just ahead of Spurs, who are equally as worse, given the season. You look at overall, they only scored 44 goals, conceded 54 goals. That was a 10 negative goal difference. I do not think it can get any worse than that. And defensively poor, really, really poor to the extent that they conceded that many goals. If anybody asks you who was Manchester United's best defender in the Premier League last season, I think you would struggle to pick because they were all that bad. They were all that bad. Somebody may come up and say maybe Nusa Mazraoui and maybe Harry Maguire tried to put in a performance, but all that sort of defensive brilliancy was being observed in the UEFA Europa League, but as far as the Premier League was concerned, they were all over the place. They were just all over the place. Man United were a shadow of the team that we've customarily known it to be. You look at then the summer signings. So, given what they went through last season, of course, the change of manager in November, Ten had been sacked. Ruben Van Nistelrooy takes over as an interim for 5 games, and he does really, really well before Ruben Amorim is brought in. Ruben Amorim comes in with his new ideas, a new system of play, which they needed to adapt to. He wasn't willing to change his tactics to suit the moment and get results on board. He never kept that. So much to Manchester United's detriment, in my opinion, because I believe if he had been pragmatic to say, okay, in the interim, let's try and play like this to put results on board so that we finish in a good position, that one helps our finances, but maybe can help us qualify for any European competition. So he did not get to do that. And what idea initially was against the idea of joining Manchester United mid-season, until he was told it's now or never. He said it turned out to be a blessing in disguise because the things he got to learn about the club within the first 6 months that he was in charge of the club, he would have never had the opportunity to learn if only he had walked in just within the summer and tried to assess the team. Now, for every manager that joins a club, for me, pre-season is always very, very important. Now, not all managers get that benefit because, as we know, football as it is, managers get sacked in the due course of the season, and managers have to be replaced. And those that do replace them have to pick up the slack from wherever they find it without any preparation whatsoever. I do not think there's anything that prepares a manager for taking up such a role. The way David Moyes did, the way Ruben Van Nistelrooy did at Leicester City, and those results can tell you that he completely fumbled that ball further. You look at David Moyes, I think he did particularly very, very well. You look at Southampton, they sacked Russell Martin, brought in Ivan Juricic, ended up, resigning from the position because things were just not working out. So it's always difficult for any manager to walk into a team mid-season and then sort of change their fortunes as much as it is possible. You remember Antonio Conte when he walked in at Tottenham following the sacking of Jose Mourinho. I think that was it around 2021. So uh, actually, no, after the sacking of Nuno Espirito Santo, because Jose Mourinho gets sacked in 2021, then Ryan Mason takes on the mantle of the team as an interim until the end of the season. Then the season starts 2021, 2022 is it? And Nuno Espirito Santo comes in. He does not complete the season. He's sacked quickly because results were not going his way. And Antonio Conte comes in 2022, I think, around that period of time. And he was able to put results on board. But the subsequent season, which was his first full season, he did not complete that because there's a lot of bickering going around between him and his bosses and the players. And it ended up to be a toxic environment. So he had to be let go. He was replaced by his then assistant, who was equally sacked before Brian Mason saw Tottenham husbands throughout the season. So it's always a challenging bit, and it was never going to be easy for Ruben Amorim because he was walking into a toxic environment at Manchester United, and not because it had just suddenly turned toxic, but because it had been that for a good number of years or seasons. So then I look at their summer signings, the kinds of players they've been able to bring in. If you notice, their focus has been on goals. Brandon Bomo scored 20 goals last season and provided 7 assists. Matthias Cunha, 15 goals and 6 assists. That's a combined what, 35 goals and about 13 assists from the two players, just those two. Then you look, they've added on Benjamin Sesko. Although he wasn't the most prolific of goal scorers in the German Bundesliga, he posted at least 13 league goals. That's more than Manchester United strikers combined throughout the campaign last season. And by that, I mean Chido Martin Obi, who did score in 7 appearances in the Premier League. I mean Rasmus Højlund, who scored only 4 Premier League goals. I mean Joshua Zirkzee, who managed to score only 3 goals. So that's a combined contribution of 7 goals, while Benjamin Sesko individually managed to score 13 in the German Bundesliga. So they've added in some good, really good players in the attacking ranks. They look to bring in a midfielder, and their target is Carlos Baleba. If they do get him, that will be a significantly huge bonus for this Manchester United side. But if they do not get him, I do not think it will be the end of the world. I still think the world will still be brilliant. When you look at their defensive side of things, I believe they have that squad that is enough to compete, because let's be honest, they're only going to be competing in the Premier League predominantly. So when you have 3 goalkeepers in Altay Bendia, Andre Onana, Tom Heaton, although you love to sort of improve in that department, improving in that department and not improving in other departments wouldn't have done much to change Manchester United. So that is still an open decision for them for as long as the transfer window is still open, with about 3 weeks still left to it. Then you look at their defensive line, and you have Harry Maguire, Lenny Yoro, Lisandro Martinez, Matthias De Ligt, Nusa Mazaraoui, Aiden Heaven, Luke Shaw. Those are all still within the ranks. Of course, they would love to move on maybe a player or 2 out of that. Maybe if they can get a good deal for Luke Shaw, he could be moved on. But for now, they still have him. Then you look at players like Patrick Togu, Diego Leon, then Amadou Diallo. Now, Amadou Diallo is not a defender, but in a couple of games, he's been played as a wingback. So I want to look at it in that context. Although for me, I would love him to play more as a 10. To constantly be within those forward positions, because that's when he can hurt opponents the most. So I look at that, and it's really great. You come to the midfield, where I believe they need, for me personally, they need a number 8, which they do not have. Even though Kobe Maino can play that, I do not think he embodies the full picture of a traditional number 8. Contributing defensively as well as offensively. I get the feeling that Kobe Maino contributes more defensively than he does offensively, and yet he's supposed to strike a balance between both the defensive duties and the attacking duties. But so far, he's falling short on the attacking duties. Yes, once in a while he will pop up and score a goal. He will pop up and provide an assist. For example, the way we saw him against Olympic Lyon last season in the quarterfinals of the UEFA Europa League, he will give you those moments. But overall, I believe a player like Yuri Tillemans would have served them. I'm not saying that it's exactly Yuri Tillemans they should be signing, but I mean a player within that kind of mold. So, but still, they still have the numbers. Casemiro, Manuel Ugarte, Kobe Mainu, those are all available there for that selection in that midfield. Then Bruno Fernandes, it looks like from the vision of Ruben Amorim, is going to play him predominantly as that number 8. Although he doesn't oftentimes thrive there, he may look to enforce that position on him. And then you have your number 10s, you have Mason Mount, you have Amadou Diallo, you have Matas Cunha, you have Brandon Bomo, and then you have the strikers. Of course, they want to move on Rasmus Højlund and raise some cash. But you, even if you are to move on Rasmus Højlund, you still have Joshua Zirkzee, Benjamin Sesko, and Chido Martin Obi as a backup. So I believe that's a squad that is really, really good enough to compete for Manchester United favorably on the Premier League front. Beyond that, I feel that you need also to look to. Then the other key point is a cultural shift. There's a bit of a cultural shift going on around Manchester United because the manager has been given the wiggle room to operate in the manner that he sees best. And that's why players like Jadon Sancho, players like Alejandro Garnacho are being moved on. Players like Marcus Rashford have been moved on, and they will look to move on others. Anthony, they are seeking exits for them because they want to get out whatever they believe to be toxicity or misbehavior from some of these players and things like that. So that culture shift, the way players need to behave on and off the pitch, how the players train, how the players live their lives outside the club is going to be part of that because last season, Ruben Amorim was complaining that just because you've been given 3 days off doesn't mean that you go and spend one of the nights in a club. It doesn't mean that you take a flight from the UK and go to Brazil, just because you have a family to visit or you go to Dubai and things like that. So he looks to set up a different cultural environment in terms of player behavior there. And I think that will be a great key to the success of the club, both in the interim and in the long run. Then also, I look at there's going to be no pressure whatsoever in terms of playing in any European competition for Manchester United. Now, people forget how much responsibility that can be and the kind of pressure when it comes to international travels for all those games, whether you're playing in the UEFA Champions League or the lowest in the UEFA Conference League, it really matters less, but the responsibility of being in those competitions is oftentimes high. And while Manchester United is accustomed to playing in such competitions and competing favorably, I think it will do them a significant advantage, and knowing that this season they won't be in that. Knowing that this season they won't have those responsibilities. Now, what does that mean is that they get to play one game per week, at least until that stage when we usher in the Carabao Cup, for which you get one fixture played, in a month, until we usher in the FA Cup in January. Their concentration is solely going to be the Premier League, week in, week out. What does that mean? It means that Ruben Amorim gets to coach his team through a fixture, for example, the opening weekend in which they face Arsenal. Win or lose, you have the entire week to go back and review what you've done, what you didn't do right, what you did right, what went wrong, what went right, and things like that, and assess and continuously improve. So, because Manchester United are going to have that every single week, almost throughout the season, I think it's going to give them a whole huge advantage to compete favorably, really. And then the squad depth is good, just like we've highlighted a majority of those players are within their ranks. It's a very, very good squad depth when you look at it, but regardless of who they may move on eventually in this transfer window. Then the other thing are the positive signs from preseason. For those of you that chanced yourselves into watching the Premier League Summer Series over there in the United States of America, I'm sure Manchester United's 2 victories against West Ham United by 2-1 and against FC Bournemouth by 4-1, as well as that draw 2-2 against Everton, I'm sure it gives you insights in regards to how Manchester United may assemble next season. Hi Ruben, what's up, what's up to you two? How are you doing? Where are you from? I'm from Kampala, Uganda, small landlocked country in the eastern part of Africa. That's where I do come to you live from. It's about 7 minutes to 10 a.m. East African time. That's my time zone. And thank you for joining us. Kindly like the broadcast, but if you've not yet already subscribed, do me the absolute favor and subscribe to the channel. So, when I assess Manchester United, and when I look at the things they were doing in preseason, beautiful country, I'm from Mexico. Oh, how is Mexico? Or as we sometimes love to call it, Mexico. Oh, it's like 6 a.m. Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. How is Mexico? How are things over there? So when I watched Manchester United in preseason, and they really, really look good. They really look good. Especially they've made improvements in their counter press. The way they sort of do the counter press, being led by, of course, the striker, the two tens, to form that narrow belt of three players that lead the press. The reason as to why I say narrow belt is because they press from within the middle and then force you to go sideways. Particularly, I saw that against Western United. And then when they force you to go sideways, then the wing backs, which is oftentimes Patrick Dobu and whoever is played on the other side, which can be Amadou Diallo, or it can be somebody else. Then they do the counter. Now, after pushing you to the wings or the sideways, you have the wing back pressing, and then you have the two, the double pivot within midfield, joining those two, to deny you spaces. And then going back, for you to play the ball back to the goalkeeper or to the defender, you have this narrow front three that are also waiting to further close down that space. So in the event, in the long run, it's supposed to force you to go long, and then you help them win. Or if you do not go long, then they're going to win back that ball easily. And they did that a couple of times against Western. Of course, if you can play out of that sort of a counter press, then you can really, really hurt Manchester United, because remember they play with the back three. So because they play with the back three, depending on how quickly you can commit numbers up front, that back three can quickly be exposed. So I thought there were so many positive things that you could pick up. And for me, Patrick Dobu is a very, very exciting player. I think he's going to be very, very integral at whatever Manchester United do and achieve throughout the campaign next season. So those are my thoughts about Manchester United and why I think that they are going to be a different beast going into next season. Of course, their opening fixture is going to be up against Arsenal. We'll perhaps get to do a review on that one, or our analysis in the coming days. But for now, that's my assessment of that. Quickly, let's go into the game between Paris Saint-Germain and Tottenham Hotspur, because those two are in action today in the UEFA Super Cup. Of course, we know that Gianluigi Donnarumma has already been omitted from that squad, and Lucas Chevalier is going to be starting in that goalkeeping role for Paris Saint-Germain. We're talking about the UEFA Champions League winners from last season versus the UEFA Europa League winners last season. Unfortunately, Manchester United is not anymore that powerful team, in your opinion. I mean, that's for sure. But look at Manchester United as an old lion. You see, when you find an old lion in the jungle that has sort of grown skinny, it doesn't mean that you're going to play around with it. It doesn't mean you're going to poke your fingers in its mouth. Just because it's old doesn't mean it cannot bite. So that's how I look at Manchester United. Of course, they are from the team they were in between 2000 and 2013. They are far from that. They are far from that, because I think between 2000 and 2013, they won, let me see, about 7 Premier League titles or more, just between that period. So they are far from that, because ever since, for the last 13 years or 12 years, they've not won a Premier League title. So it is true that they are no longer that, but they need to bounce back to that. And I believe this season is going to be the start to that. Of course, so many times they brought in managers and we thought we were going to regain back that bit of Manchester United old dominancy and one season in it was good. The following season it was bad. We saw that against under Jose Mourinho. We saw a glimpse of it under Luis van Gaal. We saw it under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So it is true to say that they are not that, but the point here we're trying to make, or I'm trying to make, is that they are going to bounce back from what they were last season, because last season, let's be honest, they finished 15th. So if they finish 10th or 8th or 7th this Premier League season, then definitely it will be an achievement, and not by the caliber of their own team, but by in terms of progress for the manager. Particularly, personally, I did predict that. My prediction is that they will finish as high as 7th on the Premier League table, just ahead of Tottenham Hotspurs, because I put Tottenham Hotspurs 8th. However, if you want to see my full predictions for how I think the Premier League season will go, and then go to the channel under the video section and look out for my predictions for the 2025-2026 Premier League season. Good wishes for Manchester United. Yeah, we wish them all the best in their endeavors. But yeah, for my full table predictions on the Premier League next season, feel free to go to the channel under the video section and check out what my predictions are. It's the most recent video on the channel. Anyways, back to the UEFA Super Cup. It's a game. It's always an exciting game, depending on which teams face each other. But I believe that PSG versus Tottenham Hotspurs will be an exciting fixture. It's going to be another huge test for Thomas Frank. But how incredible would it be if Thomas Frank were able to guide Tottenham Hotspurs to the triumph of the UEFA Super Cup, especially in terms of confidence, in terms of buying himself the much needed time going into a new season with a new team that it is in Tottenham Hotspurs. So, anyways, for PSG, we do expect them to line up with Lucas Chavalia in goal, Achraf Hakimi, Marquinhos, and Willian Pacho, as well as Nuno Mendes in that back four. Then in midfield, we do not expect to see João Neves, because remember I did sustain a red card during the FIFA Club World in the final. So we do not expect to see him here. So that's why we may see Warren Zaire as well as alongside Vitinha and Fabian Ruiz in that midfield of three. And then ahead of them, we do expect to see Desiré Doué, Ousmane Dembélé, and Kvicha Kvaratskhelia. Should there be any changes to that front three, you could get to see the likes of Bradley Barcola, you could get to see the likes of Mayuru, you could get to see the likes of Goncalo Ramos, depending on who Luis Enrique decides to go with. On the side of Tottenham Hotspurs, again, Guillermo Vicario is the #1 goalkeeper. Mickey van der Ven alongside Christian Romero, then Jody Spence and Pedro Porro to complete the back four. In the midfield, I could expect to see Paulinho, because I saw him against Bayern Munich. He got to start. Rodrigo Bentancur, and then Wilson Odegaard, Pape Matar, Mohamed Kudus, as well as Richarlison. And this is because they have so many injuries, the likes of Dominic Solanke, Dejan Kulusevski, James Maddison. Those are all injuries that they've suffered, that for players that are set to miss this particular. I think Pape Matar should be available. Yves Bissouma should be available. Lucas Bagville, I'm not sure he's injured, but I think he should be available in this fixture. So overall, given what we saw of PSG, this is a bit of an imbalanced context on paper and based on achievements from last season. But football is football. It's a one game off. It's a cup final in its own ranks. So the one game off, anything can happen in such a a fixture. The way we saw Crystal Palace edge Liverpool over the weekend, winning it 3-2 on penalties that proceeded a 2-2 draw in normal time. So we could have that, and if Tottenham Hotspurs were to go ahead and win it, it wouldn't be a huge surprise for me. But that game should be coming at 10 p.m. East African time. Sir Alex Ferguson is what Manchester United needs, best BT of all time. Let me speak to that in just a bit, Ruben. But so, if Tottenham go ahead and win it, it won't be a surprise. If PSG win it, that's the expectation. the expectation is that PSG got to win this one, and that's why I believe that PSG could win this fixture by 3-1. That's my prediction for the game between PSG and Tottenham Hotspur. Of course, contest between Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz, and Warren Zaire. I expect that to be miles ahead of what João Paulinho and Rodrigo Bentancur and Pepe Matza could look to provide. However, I do expect Thomas Frank to play with a low block and try and do the counter attack on PSG. I do not think they'll be committing so many numbers up front, knowing that how PSG are very good at exploiting spaces and that kind of thing. So expect to see the kind of game similar to what we saw in the North London derby in pre-season between Arsenal and Tottenham Hotspur. That Tottenham Hotspur won by a goal to nil, that goal scored by Pepe Matza. So that's my expectation. Back to Ruben, he says Sir Alex Ferguson is what Manchester United needs. I do not think we're ever going to see Manchester United. Sir Alex Ferguson as the gaffer of Manchester United. He will always remain on the fringes of the club. It is what it is. They fight with so many managers. The managers' problem, but everything to do with the fiber of the club. Because you can't tell me you bring David Moyes, he comes in and fails. You bring in Luis Van Gaal, he fails. Jose Mourinho fails. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer fails. Ralf Rangnick as an interim and Rangnick notwithstanding in between there. You bring in Erik ten Hag, everything fails. And by the way, it's not that they failed entirely because there were successes. Luis Van Gaal won an FA Cup. Jose Mourinho won the UEFA Europa League as well as the Carabao Cup. Erik ten Hag won the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup. So when you do that assessment overall, there were failures in totality. They were not just given the test of time. Every time it goes sideways, Manchester United quickly, cut off the arm to save the body, and yet the body itself is more sicker than the arm itself. So that's how I would look at that. Anyways, that wraps up our discussion on Manchester United and PSG. So quickly, let's get to look at what there is from the world of transfers, because a lot is happening. I do know for a fact that negotiations between Manchester United and Chelsea for Alejandro Garnacho continue because Chelsea have already agreed to personal terms with Alejandro Garnacho for them to join. That's the 21-year-old Argentine winger. Then the Newcastle are really pushing to get a deal over the line for Jacob Ramsey in a deal worth about £40 million. So West Ham were the other team interested in Jacob Ramsey. Aston Villa tried contract renewal negotiations. All those failed, and now that's the situation. He's destined for a switch to Newcastle. Then the goalkeeper Gianluigi Donnarumma is a target for Manchester City because Galatasaray are trying to sign 31-year-old Edson Morales from Manchester City, and should they get a deal done for Edson Morales, then expect to see Gianluigi Donnarumma in Manchester City, despite the fact that James Trafford from Burnley. Remember, James Trafford was a target for Newcastle before they resorted to Aaron Ramsdale. So that's that from that front. So yeah, that's the situation on that side of transfers. But also quickly, then Atlanta are confident of getting Rodrigo Muniz a deal done. With Fulham, as talks are advancing, Muniz is keen on the move to the Serie A. Negotiations are underway. I think Leeds United were the other team that were really interested in signing Rodrigo Muniz from Fulham. That means I'll have to change him out of my fantasy Premier League team. Then quickly, from the latest in regards to transfer speculation and gossip as compiled by BBC Sport as of this morning, this is some of the latest Rugambo that you need to know about. The Southampton have rejected West Ham's opening offer worth £30 million plus add-ons for 21-year-old Portuguese midfielder Mateus Fernandes. Real Madrid are continuing to monitor the progress of Crystal Palace's Adam Wharton. That's making the rounds as of this morning. Aston Villa are hoping to resign Marco Asensio from Paris Saint-Germain after the 29-year-old Spanish midfielder's successful loan spell with them last season in the second part of the season. Then Liverpool have no intention of selling French defender Ibrahim Konate amid his interest from Chelsea. Then FC Bournemouth have agreed a deal with Bayer Leverkusen for 25-year-old Moroccan forward. A deal Bayer Leverkusen, the latest, said to express interest in Brighton's Facundo Benanotti, there with the 20-year-old Argentine midfielder available for about £39 million. That's according to Kika in German, while Borussia Dortmund have walked away from a deal for Fabio Silva after Wolves increased their asking price for the 23-year-old Portuguese forward. Then Chelsea's French forward Christophe Nkunku is keen on a move to Bayern Munich with a deal for the 27-year-old still very possible, according to Florian Plettenberg. So that's the latest from the world of transfer gossip and speculation. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure doing this with you guys this beautiful morning. Thank you so much, Ruben. Thank you so much, Pedri, and every single one of you that managed to chip in, that liked the broadcast, did not submit a comment. It's been a pleasure. See you guys next time. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of the day. Bye.